There was no mortar left. I mean, it was a derelict building, certainly. So we, by that time, had put on the roof and had it secured that way. Cleaning it up was a massive amount of work.
We have started a foundation which is to promote historic preservation. We want to be involved in that process. This project, the Klostermann building, has encouraged us to be more involved in historic preservation. Marianne was on the committee at the university that set up the historic preservation program. I must admit that I've become more and more interested in historic preservation. I think there's a natural tendency to become more interested in some of that as you grow older. And we want to give back to the community. We want to help preserve some of those things. Cape has some interesting, wonderful stories to tell. I think we want to try to preserve some of that. We hope we can encourage him to keep what we have and use them in important ways. So we set up a foundation in 2012. Cape has been very good to us, I think, and we want to hopefully contribute back something to its future. I think buildings like this are really why we've done that, and it is the core of our mission to, I think, save some of these buildings so they can be enjoyed by future generations, and future generations will better understand how we got here.
Sort of without realizing it, you were up into like 5 buildings by then. Bert talked about giving back to the town, and I think that is sort of what's happened in all of the buildings with the foundation. I think the mission is to support the foundation.
Louis F. Klostermann built this building. He was born in Germany in 1837. Came to America in the late 1850s, went to Cincinnati first and worked in a dry goods store there for a fairly short period of time, a couple of years maybe, and then came to Cape Girardeau in 1860. He joined a volunteers regiment in September of 1862, went to the Vicksburg area in December, and joined up with General Grant, ended up being wounded in Battle of Chickasaw Bayou, which was a part of the Vicksburg battles. He was shot in the groin, which made it very difficult. He did survive, tried to stay in, but he had problems riding horses, moving, and so on. He wrote to General Grant then he wanted to resign for medical reasons. They gave him a medical discharge in April of 1862. He came back to Cape and was appointed postmaster. He also ran a book and stationery store, then bought the B store, the building that was on the north of this building, which ended up burning in 1989. The last tenant was Uncle Ralph's Furniture. But that was the home of the B store, which became a well-respected store, a very profitable store. He was one of the investors in the Cape Girardeau Building and Loan Association, which was founded in 1882 with a number of prominent Cape Girardeau citizens involved in that. And then he built this as the first commercial block in Cape. That was in 1905. That's why it went on their National Register as the Klostermann Block. He had a shirt factory here. This building was a strictly commercial building, rented for commercial purposes. It had a number of tenants, including an advertising agency, the city water department, Bluff City beer distributing, car dealership, all kinds of things. The upstairs, there was a number of rooms that were rented out kind of as like a hotel, and that went on for many years. So a number of different businesses were in here.
It really was never offered for sale, but when we would come back and forth from the lake and we would look at the front of this building and think of what it could be.
We used to stop in front of the building sometimes and just look at it and think that it could be a magnificent front. We thought of, well, it could be some neat apartments. It was like 5 sections in the front of the building and all seemed to be equal.
It had garage doors all across the front and garage doors in the back, and it had no roof, no plumbing, no wiring, no anything, but a beautiful front, a Mesker Brothers metal front that we didn't know anything about yet because we had not studied Mesker.
Campbell Mattress owned the building. I don't know exactly what years they used it as a warehouse, but they sort of had abandoned the building, weren't using it. The one thing they had done, which later proved to be a problem, was to build up the floors throughout the building on the lower level at truck bed height. So you couldn't open a front door or anything. The only way you'd get in it was in the back door and so on.
We were working with Randy Powders to begin to make custom furniture for clients. We needed a building to fabricate things. We knew that Norm Wood owned the building but didn't want to sell it. So we talked to Norm Wood, and I said, well, what about that old building downtown? And he said, well, yeah, I might think about selling that. And he shot me a price, and in effect, in my mind, we had bought it.
We always thought the building was very interesting. One of the reasons we bought the building originally was we were thinking about making it into a furniture manufacturing place.
But you couldn't get through it to look at it because you couldn't get into it because of the flooring being put 4 feet in the air for them to scoot mattresses through the whole building. It was $7,800 to take that floor out. So Bert looked at it, and the guy named Squirrel that worked for Norm Wood helped Bert climb up over the 3 steps that were missing in that back stairwell to get up to begin to look at the building.
We bought it from Norm Wood in early 1992. We looked at it, and it was in the wintertime, and there was ice frozen on the walls inside in many places and so on. So it had not a good roof at all. In fact, it had no heat, no plumbing, minimal electricity, but we could see potential in it.
Judy Crow, Hazel Harrison, and Laura St. Ann Keller started that whole process, but it was such a wreck that I was frightened. Several people gave me Jack Lure. Jack Lure was a well-known preservation architect in St. Louis. He's the one that worked with us through the entire project of the building. The building was in such bad shape that we tried to get numerous people to come look at it and advise, and we had one local architect come who just shook his head walking away saying it needed to be condemned. But Jack Lure hung with us all the time. Jack Lure thought there was no problem, it was a wonderful building, and we should just charge full speed ahead.
After we bought the building in early '92, we started trying to close up the outside and getting it painted and getting the front metal parts repaired and so on. And then starting on the north end of the building, getting it ready for Molly's and working on the apartment upstairs. We did those in 92, 93. Molly's opened July of 93. In 94, we built the stairway on in the back, the deck, and renovated the back apartment. Someone moved in there in November 94.
Jack loved it. He drew plans for the garden in the back. My company would do the interior floor plans and place the furniture, and then Jack would do the legal plans. So we worked with him through the whole process. And Ken Bender turned some balusters, handmade balusters, primed and painted them, and installed them. So, there was always somebody trying to help. Then the next person that came along was Patrick Steele, and he was finishing a master's degree in ceramics and came and lived in our cottage for almost 2 years and worked on scaffolding with no heat in the building and no bathroom for almost 2 years, with me bringing him meals most of the time. And he tuck pointed the building by hand, inside and out, single-handedly. The other thank you that we probably need to give is the bank. They loaned us $350,000 to redo the building with the faith that we were going to do it and succeed. We're forever, eternally thankful to the bank for allowing, for seeing that as a good opportunity.
The garden kind of came after we did the inside and everything, and we took a break and didn't do anything for a couple of years. Then we finally decided to start the next section, which was Marianne's gallery design business. And that was in the middle of the building, and we did that in '96 and mainly in '97, finished that up.
I loved having my gallery here. It was my favorite space ever. I had several locations, but the Kelson Gallery was in that center portion that was 13 South Spanish. We'd have spillover from the gallery in what we called the chocolate room, and we loved that. And that was the area that became Celebrations downtown, and it is still at this time.
And then we took another breather for a while. We had done some work in the middle of that southern section on the lower level. And then Dalhousie, when they opened in 2002, then they did not have a clubhouse, and so they came to us and wanted to rent the south end and have it called Dalhousie Downtown, and that would be their clubhouse till they could get one built out on the property. So we really had to rebuild that whole south end and change the front, take out the big garage doors that they had put in, and they then moved in 2003. That's when we basically had finished the building, at least at that time.
The building front is a pressed zinc metal front and is the only one in town that the entire front is intact. They are relatively rare. There is a group that documents and gives a number all across the country to all Mesker-fronted buildings. They were the Mesker brothers. They functioned out of St. Louis, and they did complete fronts like we have, or small sections of front. Then they also made atriums, and we feel fairly certain that in the upstairs of my gallery, we also have a Mesker atrium. It's exactly like their booklets and their drawings, and they did the entire metal front. So we think that we have, a double component of Mesker in the building, and that's been a very important reason to save the building, because it's the only one in town.
We bought the place. Some people, I think, thought we were crazy, but it's turned out to be a wonderful thing. It's been an important part of our lives. We have a lot of memories from here, and I think people have appreciated the place, and it's been a great experience. It's been an important part of our lives.
The things that we need to say about the building will be related to the town and the assistance and the interest and the support that the town has given, because we couldn't have done it without them. So that is extremely important to me.